Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're taking a look at 10 PlayStation IPs that may never see the light of day ever again. These are different times we're living in, folks. The Sony we once cherished is no longer around.
Every single day, stress comes in every way. I ain't got no time for nobody. My style is rich, dope, fat, and rich. We'll make a cake today that looks rich.
Before we begin, we publish new videos all week long. So be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Jak and Daxter series.
It's a little glowing squirrel about your size, full of spunk, and crazy as a lark.
Oh, I get it. Like a sidekick.
Ever since the series came to a close with Jak 3 and The Lost Frontier, folks have been clamoring for a fourth Jak and Daxter game. Unbeknownst to most people, Naughty Dog has tried a handful of times to give us that fourth core game. There's just one problem. Every attempt has resulted in bigger, arguably better success than the games from the earlier years. The first attempt at Jak 4 resulted in Uncharted, which saw 3 sequels, a spin-off on PlayStation Vita, and a feature film.
What?
Yeah, so unless you want to end up in a Panamanian jail, we should probably handle this ourselves.
The second attempt led to The Last of Us, which sold absurd amounts of copies, more than Naughty Dog had ever seen before, and even spawned an acclaimed TV series on HBO.
Yeah, sure, but it's complicated.
As for the third attempt, nothing came out of it but some decent concept art. However, said concept art was not capturing the look and spirit of the original games, according to internal staff. Naughty Dog staff have expressed interest in bringing Jak and Daxter back, but with most of the original teams no longer being at the studio, and Uncharted and The Last of Us seeing continuous success, is there much room for the duo anymore? PaRappa the Rapper series.
Step on the cat. Now turn to the right.
Check and turn the signal to the left.
Check and turn the signals to the left.
Step on the gas, now turn to the left.
For as much as we can respect the hip-hop hero, we have to admit that PaRappa has had his time under the sun. It was short-lived, but Sony doesn't seem to care about him anymore, and simply hasn't since the PlayStation 2 days. PaRappa the Rapper 2 came out in 2001, the original game was ported to PSP, and then we got a remaster in 2017 that was really just another port. If PaRappa 3 was ever a possibility, we would have gotten it by now, or at least heard of its cancellation.
You're probably gonna be very proud of you. Let me know if you have another flea market. I will help you, or you will help me.
Unfortunately, Japan Studio is no longer around, and PaRappa's creator, Masaya Matsuura, could not get his spiritual successor to his original work off the ground. At this point, it's going to take a high-ranking executive within Sony to get the company behind the idea of bringing PaRappa back, which is way easier said than done. MotorStorm series. If you weren't too crazy about Gran Turismo back in the PS3 days, then chances are you were checking out the MotorStorm games instead. Not only was this the alternative for those wanting an arcade racer instead of a racing sim, it was also Sony's chance to compete in the off-road racing subgenre. While the series went on for 5 whole games before hitting dormancy just as the PS4 launched, MotorStorm's role has been rendered obsolete with the PlayStation portfolio, and it is because of Gran Turismo. Polyphony's recent titles have added some off-road racing gameplay into their recent Gran Turismo games, albeit not in a super expansive way. Still, Sony would probably point to GT7 and its sales as the reason why MotorStorm is no longer around. Who knows, maybe one of those upcoming live service endeavors will result in a MotorStorm Apocalypse 2 or Pacific Rift 2, just to differentiate itself a bit from Polyphony's blockbuster racing sim. Heavenly Sword. Heavenly Sword was a truly innovative action game from the early years of the PS3, with its unique control scheme, stunning visuals, and perfect pacing. The thing that pains us the most is that, well, despite what many people will tell you, nobody bought it. Even though a sequel had already been written and planned, Sony pulled the plug on Ninja Theory and moved the project to SCE Studio Cambridge. Ultimately, the sequel was canned in 2008.
The pact is at an end. Now I must pay the price.
According to co-director Tamim Antoniades, Heavenly Sword sold 1.5 million copies, yet failed to break even. In Antoniades' own words, quote, "That's still not enough as an independent studio to break even. Ellipses. The publisher potentially breaks even at that point, but the developers don't." End quote. Sony did briefly resurrect Heavenly Sword in 2014 as an animated movie, for some reason, but it ultimately failed as well. Some of us may hold Nariko in a high regard, but Sony's numbers will always say different. Sly Cooper series.
I want to see how well you pay attention.
What do you mean?
Well, I'll unleash my mighty mojo magic upon you.
While Ratchet & Clank continue to get sequels and Jak and Daxter wallow and fade into obscurity, what about the other third of the PlayStation 2 mascots? Well, there was a moment where Sony seemed to want to continue Sly Cooper, despite the controversial Thieves in Time. In January 2014, Rainmaker dropped a teaser trailer for a Sly Cooper movie, with a release window scheduled for 2016. Alas, 2016 came and went, with no word about the movie's fate. Then, in 2017, Sony announced a Sly Cooper TV show that would premiere in 2019. And, again, nothing has been said of the project since.
I don't know, but one thing's certain. My hunch was correct. We aren't the only ones with a time machine.
And then, random rumors started cropping up in 2022 regarding Sucker Punch working on a brand new game in the series, which the developer quickly shot down. Not only that, they flat out stated, quote, "We have no plans to revisit Infamous or Sly Cooper right now, and no other studio is currently working on projects related to those franchises either," end quote. Sucker Punch is currently working on Ghost of Yotei, the long-awaited follow-up to 2020's Ghost of Tsushima. Sucker Punch also stated, quote, "We'd never say never to reopening those doors," end quote, although we aren't holding our breaths to see our favorite ring-tailed thief again. We may just get PS4 and PS5 ports, and that'll be it.
What Dimitri plans to do with the clockwork part is beyond me, but those plans end tonight.
Infamous series. Before we move on from Sucker Punch, you probably noticed Infamous was caught in the rumor with Sly. Fans have been begging for Sony and Sucker Punch to bring the first two Infamous games to PS5, if not a new entry. Indeed, the first two games were ahead of their times when it came to mechanics, animation, and physics engines. Seriously, if you go back and play these games, they're running at like 10 frames per second. Alas, not every studio wants to be the studio known for one game. And with their pedigree, Sony is going to let Sucker Punch do whatever they want and whatever they believe works best for them.
I need you.
If that means moving on from Infamous, then yeah, Sucker Punch may never revisit Cole, Delson, or Fetch ever again. Who knows, maybe PlayStation Productions can spice up the superhero movie scene with an adaptation of Cole's first game. That, or compete as a TV series against the boys, with like, I don't know, The Conduits. I'd watch that. Resistance series. Another underrated PS3 series we'd love to see again is Resistance. Of the FPS games many folks deem as the piss filter era, Resistance was one of the more unique titles in terms of visuals and weaponry. This was a series that got progressively darker in tone and how much the cast struggled in their fight against the Chimera. It was a different yet captivating side of Insomniac we hadn't seen before, but Insomniac is ultimately the Grim Reaper of this IP because of one big brand: Marvel. As revealed in the 2023 Insomniac leak, the studio has its plate full for the next decade, working almost exclusively on Marvel licensed games. There is a planned Ratchet & Clank game in between all of that, but it isn't scheduled for release until 2029. If you love Spider-Man and X-Men, you might love this direction Insomniac is heading, but for those of us wanting a simple PS5 port of the Resistance games, well, it'll be a miracle for that to happen at this point, especially when the series didn't exactly push units. Killzone series. Killzone was another unique FPS series Sony had under its belt, and it was the series that would show the potential Guerrilla Games had prior to making Horizon. Even Sony got behind the series, as it once deemed it the Halo killer. As we've seen in the past decades, Killzone never really got off the ground. Hardcore PS3 fans liked it, but in a world where everyone was obsessing over Call of Duty more than any other shooter in the late 2000s, Killzone just did not stand a chance. Even in 2013, when Killzone Shadowfall released alongside the PS4, folks still didn't show up to champion the IP. It was a commercial success, yes, but Horizon Zero Dawn changed Guerrilla Games' trajectory. Since 2017, Guerrilla and Sony have stuck with Horizon and have been going hard on sequels, spin-offs, and remasters left and right. In 2024, Guerrilla Games even stated themselves that they have moved on from Killzone and have no desire to go back. Guess we're just never getting that Killzone collection, huh?
You take point! We gotta stop the Hellgas breaking through our lines and get us out of this alive! Yes, sir!
LittleBigPlanet series. This one admittedly hurts to tread. For a time, Sackboy was considered the mascot of PlayStation. He was a character that was malleable to put in so many different games, and was often the choice guest character for third-party games like 3D Dot Game Heroes and Minecraft. On top of that, LittleBigPlanet was a valuable IP for Sony throughout the PS3 era and during some of the early PS4 years. However, after LBP3, Sony kind of stopped seeking Sackboy-related projects.
Inspiration dried up. We teetered on the brink of the abyss. And then, 3 heroes came.
Sure, we got Sackboy: A Big Adventure in 2020 when the PS5 launched, but you know what character people latched onto at that time? It was Astrobot. Since Astro's Playroom, all folks can think about is that game and Astrobot. So much so that we finally got a standalone Astrobot game in 2024. The game does feature a rescuable Sackboy bot, but with Astro seeing such resounding success, more than any ounce of success Sackboy ever saw, well, that Toy Story meme perfectly encapsulates the whole situation. R.I.P. in peace, Sackboy. EverQuest series. In the case of EverQuest, this is the most glaring and confusing omission in PlayStation's portfolio. Once upon a time, EverQuest was one of the biggest and most popular MMORPGs on the market, and while the first game was only ever released on PC, the IP found a home on PS2 with Champions of Norath, which even saw a sequel in 2007 with Champions Return to Arms. Though Sony has never given hard numbers on sales, EverQuest is still available today on PC and has an active player base of more than 80,000 players. So why not invest in trying to bring EverQuest to console and further grow that player base? Or why not remake, remaster, or port Champions of Norath for old players to revisit and new players to discover? And considering Sony's ambition to break into the live service market, you would think EverQuest would be a key player in those plans. And yet, Sony seems to have no interest in expanding this IP anymore. It's baffling. But tell me, which of these PlayStation franchises would you love to see return in some way? I am definitely pushing for EverQuest, if you cannot tell. I've talked about Champions of Norath so many times. It's maddening that Sony continues to ignore this game. But, aside from my own madness, let me know down in the comments below what franchises you want to see return, and be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays for more great videos every day.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, there's more where that came from.